Assalamu alaikum. So today I have brought another vlog in my series of vlogs on literary theory simplified. And today we are going to discuss feminist literary criticism. In order to understand feminist literary criticism, it is important to review what is feminism and what is its relationship with literary criticism. So let's start. What is feminism? Feminist literary theory explores gender inequality, aiming to understand its roots and nature. In sociology, feminism is a key conflict theory which argues that society is in continuous conflict due to the inequalities between men and women. Because of the nature of the society, which is basically patriarchal. So, what is patriarchy? The patriarchy refers to a social system where men hold the most power. In 1968, Martha Weinman Lear published an article in the New York Times titled The Second Feminist Wave. This article originated the wave metaphor, which categorizes feminism into four waves. So let's discuss the waves of feminism briefly. The first wave of feminism is marked by the suffragette movement beginning in the early 20th century. The key focus of this wave was to obtain equality between men and women through the right to vote. The second wave of feminism began in the early 1960s and lasted until the late 1980s. This wave centered on the legal obstacles to gender equality, such as workplace or reproductive rights. The third wave of feminism began in the early 1990s and continued until the first decade of the 21st century. Third wave feminism expanded the issues the feminist movement worked to address. For instance, intersectionality became a key part of the third wave feminism. The fourth wave of feminism emerged in the first decade of 21st century, while the fourth wave continued to tackle issues such as legal equality and intersectionality. It also focused heavily on sexual violence against women. The first wave feminism is the earliest stage of feminist literary criticism, acting as the foundation for feminist literary theory. This school of thought centered on the treatment of women by men, highlighting the stereotypical presentation of women by male authors. For example, in John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men, published in 1937, the character of Curly's wife is presented in a very stereotypical way. She is the only female character in the novella who mainly acts as a plot device rather than as an individual. Her lack of individuality and independence is portrayed through her not having a name, only being known as the wife of Curly. The second wave focused on gynocriticism. Gynocriticism provided a new female-led framework for literary analysis, creating a new space for the study of women writers. Gynocriticism is a term that refers to the study of women's writing. The term was coined by American feminist and literary critic Elaine Showalter in her work, A Literature of Their Own. This school of thought focused on three key areas. Number one, the place of women writers in literary history. Number two, the treatment and portrayal of women in literature. And number three, discovering a literary canon of works written by women. The third wave of feminism influenced intersectional literary criticism. This wave recognized the limitations of the second wave feminism, particularly its emphasis on gender and sex, when examining the treatment and portrayal of women in literature. Issues such as race, sexuality, and class were brought to the forefront of the third wave of feminist literary criticism, as theorists acknowledged how an individual is defined and impacted by more than their gender. Intersectionality is a theory that takes into account people's overlapping identities to understand the interconnected systems of oppression they face. Although the concept of intersectionality originated in the field of gender studies, it is now present in many fields, including literary studies. The fourth wave of feminism began utilizing literature, the news, and social media to promote feminist causes and highlight issues such as sexual harassment and gender-based violence. This wave of feminism continued to influence feminist literary criticism's examination of the treatment of women in literature and influenced the context of text in the feminist literary discourse. For example, Louis O'Neill's fiction novel, Only Every Yours, published in 2014, presents a dystopian future in which women are controlled by a patriarchal society that values them as objects rather than as individuals. Within this novel, O'Neill explores how beauty standards are used to sexualize and control women, limiting their independence and their freedom. Some important feminist theories. Simone de Beauvoir's The Other. In her 1949 work, The Second Sex, Simone de Beauvoir highlighted how women are characterized as the other by men. As the other, women are perceived in opposition to men rather than as individuals with the ability to control their own lives. Showalter's Three Phases. In her 1977 work, A Literature of Their Own, Showalter set out three phases present in the female literary canon. Number one, the feminine phase. In this first phase, female writers typically wrote in a similar way to men and wrote under the pseudonyms. Female writers chose to do so in order to have their works published and critically respected. The second is the feminist phase. Works from this phase typically addressed how women were oppressed by patriarchal social structures and the effect this oppression had. And the third phase, the female phase, writers from the female phase are less impacted by their sex. Although some women writers still focus on gendered issues in the work, this is no longer a dominant theme in the female literary canon. Gilbert and Gubar's Madwoman Thesis. In the 1979 work, The Madwoman in the Attic, Gilbert and Gubar highlighted that female characters in works written by men are either defined as an angel or as a monster. Patriarchal standards enforced a lack of individuality in women. They were expected to become wives and mothers, and if they did not fit within these roles, they were not deemed useful or worthy. Gilbert and Gubar argued that the limited opportunities available to women led to the 19th century female writers expressing their frustration to the trope of the mad woman. So to conclude, feminist literary criticism draws on the ideas of feminist theory to critique literature. This form of literary criticism explores how literature portrays and is influenced by patriarchal narratives. Elements of a text of feminist literary criticism may consider or include gendered symbols and language, the portrayal of female characters, and how the gender of the reader influences their reading of a text. Important ideas in feminist literary criticism include Simone de Beauvoir's argument that men perceive women as the other, Ellen Showalter's Three Phases in Women's Writing, and Sandra Gilbert and Susan Gubar's Madwoman Thesis. I hope that you enjoyed this brief presentation to simplify literary criticism as far as feminist theory is concerned. So this is just the first part. I'm just going to upload the second part as well. Thank you. I'm looking forward to your feedback and comments. God bless you all.